All right. So have you ever like ordered takeout, and you give your credit card number over the phone
Yeah, sure.
and you hear that message like, this call may be recorded. So common now.
Right.
But have you ever like stopped to actually think about what it means for the businesses?
Yeah.
When they have our credit card number, all that sensitive information.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for companies, I think, right? Because they need to record those calls for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Quality control, even legal protection sometimes. But at the same time, they're dealing with this incredibly sensitive data like payment information.
That's exactly it. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, I think.
Okay.
We're diving into PCI Call Recording Compliance, Key Regulations and Best Practices. It was written by Jose Luis Perez, published back in February of this year.
Okay.
And don't worry, this isn't like some boring legal document. It's actually a really interesting look at how call centers specifically are dealing with, keeping our information safe while still doing what they have to do.
I think what's important to remember is this isn't just about call centers, though, right? Because these regulations are really setting a precedent for how businesses in general should think about data security, which at the end of the day impacts all of us.
For sure. For sure. So let's get into it. The article kind of jumps right into this whole thing called PCI DSS. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard.
I have.
It sounds kind of like a mouthful.
Yeah.
But basically it's like the rule book for any company that's handling credit card information.
Yeah, that's right. Think about it like this. Imagine a world without PCI DSS, right? Companies are recording calls, storing sensitive data, but there are zero, standardized security measures in place. It would be utter chaos.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. So
Yeah.
PCI DSS is like, what? The security system, the guard dog at the door.
Exactly. And just like, any really good security system, it's got to have multiple layers, right?
Okay.
So the article really focuses on three major ones. Encryption, we've got access controls, and then secure storage.
Okay, so let's break those down. Let's talk about encryption first. I feel like I know enough about spy movies to know that that's like scrambling the data.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's basically transforming the recorded calls into, this secret code that's super hard to crack. So even if someone manages to steal those recordings without the key to decrypt it, they're useless.
Oh, okay.
Imagine trying to read a foreign language you've never seen before, just a jumbled mess.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that's one layer of protection. What about access controls? What's that all about?
So access controls is all about who has permission to actually listen to those recordings once they're taken, right? Imagine a company where anyone, and I mean anyone, from the receptionist all the way up to the CEO, could just listen in on any call recording.
Oh, no.
That is a recipe for disaster, right?
No good.
So access controls are there to make sure that only people who absolutely need to hear those calls, authorized personnel, can access specific recordings.
So it's like a need-to-know basis.
Exactly. You don't give every single person in your house a key to your safe, right?
Right.
So it's all about minimizing that risk by limiting access to that really sensitive information.
That makes sense. And then what's the third one? Secure storage and retention.
Right. So you've got the recordings, they're encrypted, you've limited who can listen to them, but you've still got to store them somewhere, right?
Right.
And not just anywhere. It has to be somewhere safe. And you have to keep them for the right amount of time. It's not just about having a super secret code. You need a super secret safe to actually put everything in.
Okay, so like how physical documents are handled in those high security environments.
Exactly. Yeah, they're locked in safes, vaults, access is completely controlled and logged, and there's procedures for getting rid of them when they're no longer needed. It should be the same for these recordings. You're protecting that information at every single stage.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But what happens if companies just ignore these PCI DSS rules? Are we talking like a slap on the wrist, or is it more serious?
This is where it gets real. Because you're talking about serious fines, potential lawsuits, reputational damage that can take years for a company to shake. But it goes beyond just avoiding getting in trouble, right? It's about showing your customers that you actually care about their data, their privacy. At the end of the day, don't you want to do business with a company that's known for being responsible with your information?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not going to shop somewhere that doesn't care about my information, for sure. But the article also mentioned that it's not all about technology, right? Employee training is a big part of this whole thing, too.
It's huge, yeah. Because even with the best tech in the world, all it takes is one employee who's not trained properly to create a vulnerability.
So like having a state-of-the-art security system, but then leaving your key under the mat.
Exactly. And that's why putting money into training your employees regularly, making sure everyone understands just how important this is, that's non-negotiable. You want to create a culture where everyone's thinking about security.
Makes sense. So we've covered why this is important, what these rules are, but the article goes a step further, and it even highlights a specific platform called Recordia.
Right.
So are they the answer?
Yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. So they present Recordia as this all-in-one platform.
Okay.
Like, it'll help you navigate all these PCI compliance rules,
Right.
which can be a real pain for companies.
Yeah, I bet.
And they offer all those things we talked about, like
Mhm.
advanced encryption, and then they have something called
What was it?
granular access control.
Oh, right. Granular access controls.
Yeah, and then, of course, all the secure storage options you could need.
Okay, so break it down for me.
What in particular?
Like granular access controls, what does that even mean?
So, you know how in a high security building, you
Yeah.
can't just like wander around wherever you want, right? You
Right.
need different clearances to access certain areas.
Okay.
That's basically what this is like.
Oh, okay.
It's giving you really fine-grained control over who can hear what recordings.
So, like, even down to the detail of
Yeah.
who hears what part of the recording.
Yeah, exactly. Someone might be allowed to listen to the call for quality control purposes,
Okay.
but they don't need to hear the part where the customer gives their credit card number.
Right, of course.
So they wouldn't have access to that part of the recording.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's smart. Okay, so it's like super specific security clearance for call recordings. But is this Recordia thing legit? Or is this just another example of a company,
What do you mean?
like using this whole compliance thing to,
To make money, you're saying?
Yeah. The article we read did seem to really like them.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's good to be a little skeptical, right?
Mhm.
Whenever a company's telling you about a problem and then conveniently offering their product as the solution.
Exactly.
But in their defense, the article did make some good points about how Recordia specifically helps with this stuff.
Oh, okay, so what'd they say? Convince me. Well, they talk a lot about how Recordia streamlines everything.
Okay.
Because if you're a company and you have to find separate solutions for all these things,
Right, encryption and
access control,
storage, all that stuff.
it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
But Recordia puts it all in one platform.
Oh, okay.
And it was designed specifically with this PCI DSS stuff in mind.
So you don't have to worry about cobbling it all together yourself.
Exactly.
It just works.
Supposedly.
Okay, but is convenient really the best way? Like, are we sacrificing something to make it easier?
I think that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
But the article argued that it's more than just convenient
Okay.
because all of Recordia's features, all this stuff we just talked about.
Right, the super advanced encryption,
Yeah.
the granular controls, all of that.
Right. All of that directly translates to better security, which is the whole point.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You want peace of mind knowing your data is actually safe, not just that the company is following some rules. But the article did say something about ongoing monitoring. Like, even with a system like this, you can't just set it and forget it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Not even close.
Things change.
Technology's always evolving.
Right.
And so are the hackers.
That's true.
So PCI DSS, it's not just a set of rules.
Yeah.
It's got to adapt to keep up with the bad guys.
So it's an ongoing process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess that's part of the appeal of working with a company like maybe Recordia.
Yeah.
They kind of handle all that stuff for you.
So you can focus on other things.
Exactly. It's like having an expert on your side, right?
Yeah.
Especially in such a complex field.
Yeah, no one wants to be bogged down in all the technical details, right?
Exactly.
What really struck me, though, was how they brought it all back to customer service.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to lose sight of that with all the talk about rules and regulations.
Right, for sure.
But this is all about people.
Yeah, it's about trust.
Absolutely, yeah. And that made me think, as technology changes how we interact with businesses, all these AI chatbots and virtual assistants and stuff, how does that impact recording and security?
Well, it's interesting because on the one hand, we're interacting with companies more and more online.
Yeah, it seems like every website I go to these days.
It's true. So we're sharing more data than ever before.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not always clear what's being collected
Right, right.
and how it's being used.
It's tricky. How do you balance convenience? Because these technologies can make things so much easier with security and privacy.
It's a tough question. Every company has to figure that out.
They do.
Or else they get left behind.
Exactly.
It's a high-stakes game for sure.
Huge.
Okay, so we talked about these PCI DSS requirements, what they mean for businesses. We even looked at a possible solution, this Recordia platform.
Yeah.
And we even touched on the future of customer service in an increasingly digital world.
Absolutely.
It's not just about following the rules blindly, though, right?
No, not at all.
It's about understanding why those rules are there in the first place.
It's about building trust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there was one more thing that stuck with me from the article. They focused mainly on call centers.
Right.
But it got me thinking about all the other ways companies are recording us these days.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, you know how like pretty much every website you go to these days is
Ah.
like, this chat may be monitored for quality assurance purposes.
Right.
Or they'll have something about how they're recording keystrokes to,
Improve the user experience.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It just makes you wonder, are they handling all of that data the same way these call centers are supposed to with our credit card info?
That's a great question, and it's really complicated.
Is it?
Yeah, because the idea, like the general principles of data security
Right.
and, being transparent with customers, those are pretty universal.
Sure.
But the actual rules and regulations,
Yeah.
they can be totally different.
So just because I see a message that says they're recording me, doesn't mean they're following those same PCI rules.
Maybe, maybe not. It really depends.
Somewhat.
It could be the type of interaction, like a call versus a chat.
Okay.
It could be the industry the company's in.
Oh, I see.
Some industries have stricter rules than others.
Right.
And then every country has their own laws about data.
So it's like a free-for-all.
Kind of, and it's almost impossible to keep track of it all, especially for us as just regular people.
Yeah. I mean, who actually reads those privacy policies?
Right. They're so long and confusing.
This is stressing me out.
Yeah.
How are we supposed to know which companies are actually handling our data responsibly?
Okay, so it can feel overwhelming, for sure.
It really can.
But like they say, knowledge is power, right?
Okay, yeah.
So just try to be more aware, Like when you're online,
Yeah.
pay attention to who you're interacting with.
Okay.
Think about what information you're giving them.
And like, why?
Exactly. And if you're not sure about something, ask.
So I should just call them out on it.
You can. You'd be surprised. A lot of companies actually have information about this stuff readily available.
Okay, so trust but verify.
Right. Or maybe more like, be a little skeptical and don't be afraid to ask questions.
I like that. So I guess what we learned from all of this is that whole "this call may be recorded" message, that's just the tip of the iceberg
Oh, yeah, for sure.
when it comes to how much data companies are collecting these days.
Absolutely. It's like a whole new world out there.
It really is. So next time you see one of those messages about being recorded,
Yeah,
don't just ignore it.
right.
Think
Right.
about what they're recording, why, and if you're comfortable with it.
Exactly. You have the right to know.
Because at the end of the day, we have to be in control of our own data, right?
We do. And hopefully these conversations help with that.
I think so. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. But this is a conversation we're going to keep having
For sure.
because this technology is always changed.
They never stop.
Right. So until next time, I'm your host, and this has been The Deep